It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. Early this morning, in what appears to be a highly orchestrated media event, the self-declared interim president of Venezuela, Juan Guaidó, announced to the public that he was calling for an insurrection of Venezuela's military against the government of President Nicolas Maduro.
Hacemos un gran llamado a los empleados públicos.
Now, a call on the civil servants, who are a fundamental component not only for the transition, but also for the reconstruction of Venezuela, to recover national sovereignty. Our armed forces today, courageous men who follow the Constitution, have responded to our call. We have come together in the streets of Venezuela. Operation Freedom, the Committees of Freedom and Aid, I invite you to be activated immediately. I invite you to cover the streets of Venezuela.
The announcement was made from a freeway where the Caracas Air Force Base is located. Guaidó was accompanied by 20 or so soldiers in uniform brandishing weapons. Now, President Maduro immediately denounced the move. Venezuela's Defense Minister, General Padrino Lopez, tweeted that the military accompanying Guaidó is a small group of traitors. On to discuss the situation with us is Mike Fox. He's on the ground in Caracas. He's actually in Altamira, but a few minutes ago he was on location at the Air Force Base. And in studio here, we are joined by our in-house expert on Venezuela, Gregory Wilpert, who's also our managing editor here. Welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mike, describe what is going on the ground. You were on site very early morning as this was being tweeted out to the general public.
Absolutely. Well, outside of the Air Force Base for several hours, opposition supporters have been grouping outside. We're talking about 100, we're talking about a couple thousand at this point. They've been just outside the Air Force Base, groups with hoods, and have been throwing rocks, trying to get in to the side of the Air Force Base. This is on the opposite end, kind of on the northeastern side of the base, just a few blocks from Altamira. So it's very clear, the international media has obviously been saying that, or at least first came out that Guaidó had occupied the base. That is absolutely not true, because these people have been battling it out with the Venezuelan armed forces, which have been shooting tear gas into the crowd. And there's been a bit of a cat and mouse game where the people come down to kind of the wall, and then they're forced back. Now, like I said, for the last, say, 45 minutes, I've been a few blocks away, and there's been a steady stream of opposition supporters that have been walking and marching in from, at least here, from the eastern Caracas into Altamira, and then are headed to the one location. Throughout the rest of Caracas, things seem to be fairly calm, from at least according to the people that I've been in touch with. I do know that there are people amassed outside of Miraflores, supporters of President Nicolas Maduro. So that's kind of the latest, where the opposition supporters many of them are saying this is kind of ground zero. This is it. It's now or never, and we're going to see what happens.
And Mike, explain to us the way in which this unfolded this morning. How did you come to know about it?
Yeah, well, it was a tweet, actually, that came out from Juan Guaidó. I think it was a Periscope through his Twitter account. And that really lit everything on fire. And obviously that tweet, in it, he called for insurrection. He had military members behind him. He had Leopoldo Lopez, who is a longtime member of the opposition, who's been under house arrest for many years for his role in the Guarimbas, in which dozens of people were killed. And he was obviously with him. He was out of his house, and he was out. They were just outside of the colorful military base. And he insinuated in his tweet that they had occupied that base, and many people thought that actually a coup had taken place because of the military supporters behind him. Now, there's been other videos that have surfaced, one in particular just recently, in which many of those same military members, now this is unconfirmed, but if the video is true, many of those militaries, those soldiers that were there behind him were actually brought there by mistake. They say they were tricked by their commanding officer.
Yesterday, at approximately 6 p.m., we were told to get our Patriot uniform, to receive a decoration and news that would change our lives. That's what they told us. That's what they're looking for, a confrontation of military against military. But we showed them that they can't.
So there's a lot of things we don't know at this point, but we do know that things kind of kicked off just around 6 o'clock, just before 6 o'clock. And since then, everything has been kind of turned upside down.
And describe the situation on the ground, Mike. What are you seeing in terms of the number of soldiers that are there? What is actually happening at the Air Force Base? What are the developments now?
Yeah, so I was there roughly an hour ago, and I'm going to be headed back because I couldn't have my internet connection from there. It's very hard to see the soldiers from kind of the inside of the base. From where we were standing, and it's hard to get close because of the tear gas that they've been firing. But there are obviously a number of them, dozens of soldiers inside. In the opposition concentration where I was this morning, I'd say about 7 or 8, that people obviously cheered on. That's not confirmed whether or not they were actually members of the armed forces, but they appeared, and the idea was that they were kind of defecting and joining the opposition. And on the bridge there and on the side of the road, while I was there, there was definitely a couple thousand people. And obviously they are definitely up in arms and very excited to try and push as much as possible. Basically what they're saying is this is kind of the beginning of the May 1st. And that's what Guaidó said also. They've been planning a big march for tomorrow, May 1st, Workers' Day, as well as Nicolas Maduro and the Chavista supporters have been obviously planning a very big march for tomorrow. But this march, Guaidó had said it would be the biggest in Venezuelan history, and he says this is the beginning. And so that's why kind of the people at mass now and kind of calling it, saying it's now or never.
Early morning reports was that Guaidó had taken over this Air Force base. That is quite the contrary. And what you're reporting to us is there's a few isolated members of the military that is accompanying Guaidó, and even their allegiance is in question at the moment.
That's absolutely true. And any international reporting that is out there that Guaidó has taken the base is absolutely false. If he had taken the base, he wouldn't have been firing tear gas on the opposition supporters that were trying to get in, and they wouldn't have been throwing rocks at the armed forces. And so, yes, I think part of this. This is my analysis that part of this is part of a much larger plan to create a kind of a media image, right? An international image that Guaidó has power, he has power from the armed forces, with the hope that they can turn out opposition supporters and really kind of create kind of a general opinion in the international media that, Guaidó has now done this uprising, but that is definitely not the case. I cannot see him from where I am, and it's hard to see the bridge, the overpass, where he is at that moment, even from where I was located next to the Carlito base. But he has definitely not taken the military base.
All right, Greg, you've seen these kinds of efforts in the past in terms of coups against President Chavez and so on. What is this particular incident? Significant, of course, in terms of what is unraveling in Venezuela. What is your take on what's happening?
Well, in some ways, it's reminiscent of what they call the guarimbas. That is, they start out as a small uprising, small effort to call to the military to rise up. That never ends up happening, and then they manage to get some radical opposition supporters to blockade streets, which they're doing right now with the main freeway. I've heard reports that they're also blockading other neighborhoods, particularly where the opposition is strong, such as also in Mérida. So this is kind of an effort to get people to mobilize again against the Maduro government, but doesn't seem to be very successful. I mean, I think one of the main things to note is, for example, that thousands actually are also gathering right now in front of the presidential palace in Miraflores and to express their support for the government. And so far, no larger contingent of the military seems to have switched sides to Guaidó. And so it really looks more like an effort to provoke an international incident, perhaps even get themselves arrested in order to get an outside intervention of some sort. That, to me, seems to be more of the strategy, and also a gradual buildup than a sudden coup, which, like I said, doesn't seem like it's happening at the moment.
All right, Mike, you are headed to Miraflores right after this conversation with us. Tell us what the response of the Maduro government has been thus far.
Well, obviously, they have condemned this. You had the Minister of Defense that tweeted out very early saying that all sectors of the armed forces are very much in the hands of the authorities of the Nicolas Maduro government, that there has not been defections. And like you said, they've called for people to surround Miraflores. And like Greg just said, that there's been thousands there that have been hitting the streets, in defense. So obviously this is an issue. It's a very big issue, but it's not the issue that many of the international media have been claiming, have been talking about, and it's much, as Greg said, this is it's much more minor than many people thought may have occurred this morning.
All right, Mike, we'll leave it there for now, but we will be looking for you throughout the day as things develop on the ground in Caracas. Let me give you the final word, Greg.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing that's an important new development. Just today, Reuters reported that Eric Prince has unveiled a plan to hire mercenaries to overthrow Maduro. Now, this is a secret plan that Reuters just reported on this morning, so I don't think that's too much of a coincidence. It doesn't seem clear whether the Trump administration would move forward with that. But also the fact that Pompeo, the Secretary of State Pompeo, National Security Advisor Bolton, and Senator Marco Rubio have all, in synchronization with Guaidó, tweeted about this incident, saying that we're standing 100% behind you, is again another indication that this is an effort that has an international dimension and not just something that is happening in Venezuela.
And just to remind folks, Eric Prince was the CEO of Blackwater, and that's the company that carried out various atrocities and played this role in Iraq and Afghanistan. I thank you all for joining us, and we will keep reporting throughout the day today about what's unraveling in Venezuela. Thank you for joining us for now.